7 years after the wedding, Azaria realized for the first time that her husband was a stranger. Darius had forbidden her from visiting his mother's house in the country under the pretext of an eternal renovation. When she received the news that her mother-in-law had passed away a month ago and Darius had to leave town for a business trip, Azaria decided to secretly travel to the house that Odessa May had left as an inheritance. But as soon as she opened the door, she froze. Her body trembled, breath caught in her chest. What lay behind that door turned out to be more terrifying than any nightmare. But before we continue, please tell me, where are you from and how old are you? I would be interested to know who is with me right now. Happy listening. Azaria Vance sat by the window of her apartment in the new Aurora Heights complex on King Drive, watching the March wind whip the snow into swirls around the streetlights. Chicago, at this time of year, turned into a monochrome painting. The leaden sky merged with the whitish earth, and the buildings stuck out like black teeth against the background of endless gray. A city bus drove by, splashing the bus stop with a wave of dirty slush, and a few construction workers with backpacks cursed, shaking off their heavy Carhartt jackets. Azaria adjusted the knitted throw blanket on her knees, an old habit of bundling up even in a warm apartment, and took a sip of cold tea from the mug Darius had given her for their last anniversary. "Best wife," read the inscription in gold letters, already peeling a bit at the edges. "Azaria, baby, where'd you disappear to?" Her husband's voice floated in from the kitchen, along with the smell of fried onions. "I'm making scrambled eggs with turkey sausage. You want some, or are you on that keto diet again?" "I will, of course I will," she called back, not turning her head from the window. From the outside, their life looked like a picture-perfect spread from Essence magazine. A 3-bedroom condo with designer renovations. The mortgage paid off 3 years early. The refrigerator stocked with delicacies from Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Darius worked as a project manager for Midwest Energy Solutions. He brought home $15,000 a month after taxes, which was considered nearly oligarchic income in their circle. After getting married, Azaria had left her job as a nurse practitioner at Cook County Hospital. Endless night shifts, difficult patients, the eternal smell of bleach and medicine. "Why do you need this torture, Azaria?" Darius would coax her, hugging her shoulders. "I'm a man. I provide for my family." And he really did provide. You couldn't argue with that. Only, through all the years of their marriage, there remained one splinter that ached and gave her no peace. His mother's house in Cedar Grove, a small town about an hour out, where her path was forbidden. "That Miss Clementine called again, Mama's neighbor." Darius set a plate of steaming eggs and savory sausage in front of his wife. "She keeps pestering with questions. When are we finally coming to visit? I told her the usual. Once we finish with the renovations, then you're welcome to come over." Azaria raised a tired gaze to her husband, the same rehearsed answer she had heard year after year, like a broken record. "Darius, honey, how long can you keep patching up and rebuilding that poor house? Let's just go once. Let me see with my own eyes how things are progressing. Maybe I can help." Her husband's face instantly tensed, just a tiny bit. An ordinary person wouldn't have noticed. But Azaria, over years of living together, had learned to read these micro-changes in his expressions, these alarm bells. "Zari, we've discussed this 100 times. Everything there is turned upside down. We're changing the rotten beams. The floors have fallen through. The roof is leaking. There's dust everywhere, impassable mud. The cheap contractors make noise from morning to night. What haven't you seen there?" "I haven't seen your mother," she replied quietly, but with pressure putting down her fork. In 7 years of marriage, Azaria had met her mother-in-law only a handful of times. You could count them on the fingers of one hand. Twice at the very beginning of her and Darius's romance, when the elderly woman came to the city for a checkup at the university hospital, and the only time in the first year after the wedding, when the newlyweds made it out to Cedar Grove for Memorial Day weekend. Since then, not once, for love or money. In her memory, Odessa May remained a quiet woman of few words with kind brown eyes that held some hidden sorrow. At their first meeting, when Darius introduced them, his mother had unexpectedly hugged Azaria and stroked her back with a maternal gesture. "You take care of my Darius, baby girl. He's a good man, just been very lonely." That simple gesture, the palm sliding across her back, had somehow etched itself into her memory forever. Azaria had wanted so badly to get to know this woman closer, to become friends, to become, if not a daughter by blood, then at least a close spirit. But the iron door to her mother-in-law's house had slammed shut in her face. "Mama hasn't been feeling well lately." Darius sat opposite, smearing yolk on his plate with a piece of cornbread. "Her heart is acting up. Her pressure jumps up and down. I take her to the county clinic every month for checkups. I buy expensive medicine at the pharmacy. Don't worry, baby. Everything is under my control. Everything's cool." "Can I at least call her? Hear her voice? Say hello?" "Her phone is broken. I've told you this 150 times. The reception in that town is garbage, barely catches a signal, and even then, only if you press yourself against the window on the second floor. Next time I go, I'll buy her a new device, some simple flip phone." Azaria silently picked at her eggs, which suddenly seemed rubbery and tasteless. 2 years ago, Odessa May's number had stopped answering. Long beeps went into the void. And before that, there were those strange words spoken in a weak voice into the receiver. "You just ask Darius, daughter. Let him decide when you should come." Now, looking back, Azaria realized it wasn't maternal advice, but a veiled plea for help, a cry from the soul that she had failed to hear. 3 months ago, something happened that made her openly doubt her husband's words for the first time. Darius returned from another trip to the construction site well past midnight. Azaria wasn't asleep. She was waiting in the hallway. On his Timberland boots, she noticed not the usual construction dust or cement crumbs, but clumps of fresh reddish clay, moist, sticky, thickly adhering to the soles. "Where did this clay come from, Darius?" she asked, pointing to the dirty tracks on the rug. "It's freezing outside, 10 degrees below zero. The ground is frozen solid 3 feet down, hard as stone." Darius froze on the threshold, then spoke too quickly, choking on his words. "Oh, that was at a buddy's place, Leroy's. His lot is right next to Mama's house. He asked for help with the foundation for a shed. We were digging a pit. That's where the mud came from." "Digging a foundation in winter? At this temperature? Are you crazy?" For the first time in all their years together, Darius raised his voice at her, almost breaking into a scream. "What is this? An interrogation? I am, by the way, bending over backwards, trying for my mother so she can meet old age in human conditions, not in a shack. And here you are with your accusations and suspicions. You should be ashamed." That night, Azaria tossed and turned for a long time, burying her face in a pillow wet with tears. She wasn't crying from the insult of harsh words, but from the acute, almost physical sensation that her husband was lying to her, brazenly and cynically lying about something extremely important connected to that cursed house in Cedar Grove. After that ugly argument, Darius tried to make amends. He brought diamond stud earrings from a jewelry store on the Magnificent Mile, took her to dinner at a high-end steakhouse where one portion cost as much as her old weekly salary. Azaria accepted these offerings with a pale, forced smile. Something had broken inside. She was no longer the naive, trusting wife. Now she watched her husband on the sly, studied his habits and gestures, tried to unravel what he was hiding. And then, in the last days of March, when winter just wouldn't give up its position, everything changed in the most unexpected way. Saturday morning turned out to be unusually calm. Azaria was busy in the kitchen with the dough for a peach cobbler. Darius adored her signature dessert. Shouts from a commentator drifted from the living room. Her husband was watching a replay of last night's Bulls game. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed piercingly. "Who the hell is that at this hour?" Darius yelled discontentedly from the other room. "It's Saturday, a day off." Azaria wiped her flour-stained hands on her apron and went to the intercom. On the small screen loomed the figure of a respectable man in an expensive wool coat with a leather briefcase in his hand. "Good afternoon. I'm here to see Mr. Darius Vance on an important matter. I am attorney Langston Pierce. I represent the firm Pierce & Associates." In the spacious living room, the lawyer settled into a soft armchair, pulling a folder of documents from his briefcase. Darius sat opposite on the sofa, all gathered, tense as a violin string. "I must apologize immediately for disturbing you on the weekend," Pierce began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "But the matter cannot wait. A month ago, your neighbor from Cedar Grove, Miss Clementine, contacted me. She was concerned about the long absence of Mrs. Odessa May Vance and asked me to find out her whereabouts through official channels. Unfortunately, I must inform you of some sad news." Azaria felt everything inside her drop into a bottomless abyss. The tray with teacups trembled in her hands. "What?" "What news?" she whispered barely audibly with dry lips. "Odessa May Vance passed away 32 days ago in the intensive care unit of the county hospital. Official cause of death: acute renal failure due to chronic kidney disease. I am sincerely sorry for your loss." Darius covered his face with his hands. His broad shoulders shook slightly, and stifled sobs escaped his throat. But Azaria watched this picture of performative grief with cold eyes. Her mother-in-law had died over a month ago. She had lain in the morgue, then in the cold ground, and she, the daughter-in-law, knew nothing, did not come to say goodbye, was not at the funeral or the repast. "Why? Why didn't you tell me, Darius?" Her voice trembled with barely suppressed rage. "A month has passed, a whole month. I didn't know how. I didn't want to upset you for nothing." Her husband sniffled and smeared tears over his cheeks, but Azaria clearly saw it was all a cheap show for the lawyer. Pierce took a brown envelope and a small bunch of old keys from the folder. "Here are the documents for the house in Cedar Grove. The deed, the property tax records. According to the will, Odessa May left all property to you, Darius Vance, as the sole heir of the first order." After the lawyer left, as soon as the door closed behind him, Azaria exploded. "3 months ago you went to your mother's. I remember perfectly. I saw the clay on your boots. That means you were somewhere doing earthworks. She was already sick then, right? You were driving her to hospitals and stayed silent as a tomb." "I didn't want to worry you in vain," Darius snapped, jumping up from the sofa. "And when she died, was that also worrying in vain? A month has passed. Where did you bury your own mother? In which cemetery? Why didn't I, her daughter-in-law, know?" "Because I didn't want you to see her in such a terrible state," he suddenly yelled, spraying saliva. "The house is a nightmare, a complete ruin. She herself was emaciated, sick. I was ashamed of all that poverty, do you understand, or not?" He grabbed the envelope with the keys from the table and swiftly went into his home office, slamming the door with a crash. Azaria heard the characteristic click. Her husband locked the documents in the drawer of his desk, where he hid all important papers. The next 4 days dragged on painfully slowly. Every hour seemed like an eternity. Darius played the inconsolable son, sitting for hours in the living room in front of the turned-off TV, staring with an unseeing gaze at the black screen. But as soon as he thought his wife wasn't looking, instead of grief, something else appeared in his eyes. Nervousness, anxiety, fear of exposure. On the 5th day, Wednesday, over a breakfast of oatmeal and toast, he made an unexpected announcement. "Zari, they're urgently calling me to a site in North Dakota. Serious accident on the rig, a pipeline burst. They need a specialist of my level to organize the repair work. I'm leaving tomorrow at dawn. I'll be back in about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks if things go tough." "Got it," she replied shortly, not raising her eyes from her plate. Darius clearly expected a completely different reaction. Tears, wifely lamentations, pleas not to leave her alone in such a difficult moment. But his wife just continued to mechanically chew the oatmeal, which had become like sawdust in her mouth. All day, Azaria furtively watched her husband pack things into a travel bag. He whistled some stupid tune under his breath, neatly folding shirts and socks. Several times he took out his phone, typed something quickly, and smiled that special smile that made everything inside Azaria clench into an icy ball. At 5 a.m, Darius kissed his feigning sleep wife on the forehead. She purposely pulled the blanket up to her chin and closed her eyes. His lips seemed cold to her, like a dead man's. As soon as the front door slammed and the steps in the corridor died down, Azaria jumped out of bed. A clear plan of action had already matured in her head. Her husband's office, of course, was locked, but she remembered one small detail. In the pocket of his work jeans, which were lying in the laundry hamper, there was always a miniature key to the desk drawer. Rummaging in the bathroom, she found the coveted ring. And the spare key to the office itself, Darius, in his self-confidence, kept in the top drawer of the dresser in the hallway. Apparently, he considered his wife incapable of rebellion and espionage. In the desk drawer, she found what she was looking for, the bunch of old keys to the house in Cedar Grove and a thick blue folder labeled House Renovation, Cedar Grove. Azaria opened the folder, expecting to see estimates, contracts, certificates of completed work. But inside there were only receipts, hundreds and hundreds of receipts from Home Depot and Menards, bags of cement, truckloads of sand and gravel, rebar, siding, insulation, drywall. All receipts were punched neatly once a month for many years. The total amount of expenses approached $400,000, a fortune. Between the receipts, Azaria found a small note written in an unfamiliar female handwriting. Rounded, slightly slanted, obviously young. "She's out of pills again. Need to buy urgently." The strange phrasing alerted her. She, not I or Mama Odessa. Shoving the keys into her coat pocket, Azaria left the office. An hour later, she was already shaking in an old Greyhound bus heading toward Cedar Grove. She bought the ticket with cash. Bank transactions could be tracked. She intentionally left her mobile phone turned on at home on the nightstand. Let Darius think she hadn't left the city. Cedar Grove met her with ringing silence and the tart smell of pine forest mixed with smoke from chimneys. The town turned out to be not such a backwater as her husband had described. It was a quite lived-in place with paved streets, brick buildings, a modern administration building, and even a small strip mall. In the grocery store, a full-figured cashier with a warm complexion gave the unfamiliar visitor a curious look. "You here to see someone specific, Sugar? Maybe I can tell you how to get there?" "To Odessa May Vance. I'm a distant relative from the city," Azaria lied, ashamed to admit her true status. The woman threw up her hands and shook her head. "Oh, Lord have mercy, Odessa May passed on already. More than a month since we laid her to rest in our churchyard. May she rest in peace. She was a good woman, quiet, never crossed nobody." "And where is her house located? I just want to take a look." "Well, you go right past the post office, then turn onto Pine Street. It's the third house on the right side with the green metal fence. Beautiful house, rich, with a big lot. Her son Darius built it all up like it was for himself." Beautiful, rich house. Everything flipped over inside Azaria. She thanked the talkative cashier and headed along the indicated route, feeling her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. On Pine Street, her legs stopped on their own, refusing to go further. Before her towered not a dilapidated shack and scaffolding, covered with bags of cement and stacks of boards. It was a modern two-story colonial-style home, sheathed in light beige vinyl siding with high-quality windows and a dark red roof. A manicured lawn, neat bushes of hydrangeas, a greenhouse in the far corner, no traces of renovation, no construction site, no workers. Years of endless lies. "Hey, miss, who you looking for?" a voice called out from behind the neighboring fence. Over a low wooden picket fence, an elderly woman in a colorful head wrap looked at Azaria, holding a rake in her wrinkled hands. "I'm Azaria, Darius Vance's wife, Odessa May's daughter-in-law," she introduced herself in a raspy voice. The neighbor gasped and dropped the rake. "Darius's wife? Child, you don't say. He told everyone his wife was lying on her deathbed in the city, stage 4 cancer, going through chemo." Azaria's legs gave way. She had to grab the gate to keep from falling. What exactly did he say?" "Everyone in town knows this sad story." The woman came closer, lowering her voice to a sympathetic whisper. "Darius passes for a martyr around here. The poor man rushes between a terminally ill wife in the city oncology ward and an old, frail mother. He says his wife can't come here no way. No cold for her, no bumping around on the road. Her immunity is gone after the chemo. We all pitied him, sighed, saying, 'Look how unlucky the man is in life. I'm Miss Clementine, their neighbor for years.'" Azaria felt the ground slipping from under her feet. So her husband didn't just hide the house and his mother from her. He hid her from everyone, turning her into a non-existent dying phantom. "And Odessa May, tell me, how did she live lately?" Miss Clementine shook her gray head. It's a strange story, straight out of a detective movie. About 2 years ago, Odessa May seemed like she was swapped out. Before that, she was a spry grandma, went to the store herself, dropped by neighbors for tea, came to church meetings, and then cut off, stopped coming out of the house completely, didn't even open the gate. We neighbors tried to visit, knocked, hollered, and Darius would pop out and say, "Mama is resting. The doctor strictly forbade disturbing her. Weak immunity." And then he put up that high fence, solid, metal, supposedly protection from the wind. Only it didn't look like protection, but like a prison wall. Lord forgive me for such words. "And the renovation? Darius told me they've been doing a major overhaul for years." "What renovation, honey?" The neighbor snorted. "They put the siding on 5 years ago, redid the roof, and that was it. But they hauled furniture in. That, yes. I saw everything from my second-floor window. Trucks from Ashley Furniture coming, unloading leather sofas, wardrobes, canopy beds. Appliances, too. Double-door fridges, big plasma TVs, huge washing machines. And you know what was most surprising?" Azaria gripped the fence bars with white knuckles. "Toys. Boxes and boxes of children's toys. Tricycles, Barbie dolls, remote control cars, Lego sets. I asked Darius once what all that was for, and he says, 'For charity helping an orphanage in Chicago.' Lies. Purely lies. What charity if they carried it all into the house?" "Toys. Children's toys," Azaria repeated, feeling a terrible picture clearing up in her head. "That's not all." Miss Clementine looked around and lowered her voice to a whisper. "In the evenings, sometimes voices were heard. Not Odessa May's old voice, a young woman's, laughing so ringing, talking. And a child sounded like either a kid crying or playing. But Darius always found an explanation, said the TV was on loud or the builders stayed late. Only what builders if there was no construction?" The mosaic fell into a monstrous picture. Darius had a second family. Here, in his own mother's house, while his wife in the city believed in an endless renovation. "Lord, what is happening?" Azaria whispered, and tears flowed down her cheeks against her will. "You really didn't know anything, baby girl." Miss Clementine looked at her with sincere compassion. "My poor child, how did this happen? I knew nothing. 7 years married and knew nothing. You go into the house, sort things out there. You got the keys. I'll be nearby if anything. Scream. My husband, Mr. Earl, is home. He's old, but still strong. He'll help if needed." Azaria took out the bunch of keys. Her hands shook so much she barely hit the keyhole. The front door opened silently, without a single creak. The hinges were well oiled. The first thing she felt was a wave of warm, even hot air. The heating was working at full power. A cloying smell hit her nose, expensive air freshener with the scent of alpine meadows, mixed with bleach and something else, musty, unhealthy. The spacious living room struck with immodest luxury. Expensive laminate looking like natural oak, a huge corner sofa made of chocolate-colored eco-leather, a coffee table made of tempered glass. On the wall, a TV panel the size of half the wall. But the main thing that caught her eye was the photographs. The entire wall, from floor to ceiling, was hung with frames of different sizes. Darius against the background of the pyramids in Giza. Darius in a ski suit on a slope, judging by the landscape aspen, or vale. Darius with a huge pike in his hands against the background of a river. Darius by a black Cadillac Escalade, the latest model. On this entire wall of boasting and narcissism, there was no place for a single photograph of his mother, not a single shot of Azaria. Their wedding, their 7 years of life together, simply did not exist here. They were erased, scrubbed from reality. In the kitchen, she found built-in premium appliances, a solid wood dining table for 8, and on the refrigerator door, attached by a magnet in the shape of a funny kitten, a child's drawing. 3 multicolored figures under a bright sun, holding hands. Above the tallest male figure, in uneven childish handwriting with a mistake, was written a word that made Azaria's breath catch. Daddy. Not Uncle D, not just a man. Daddy. At the end of a long corridor, she found a massive door locked with a key. The smallest key on the ring fit perfectly. The click of the turning lock sounded in the silence of the house like a pistol shot. A pungent smell hit her nostrils. A concentrated mixture of medicines, rubbing alcohol, bleach, and that special, unmistakable smell of a long, severe illness eaten into the walls. In the gloom, heavy curtains blocked the daylight. Azaria made out a hospital functional bed with metal rails, an IV stand looking like a metal skeleton, a compact oxygen concentrator in the corner. On the bedside table, a whole battery of medicines, vials, blisters, boxes, syringes, and packages. Here, they kept Odessa May. In her own house, they turned a room into a hospital ward prison, a solitary cell. But that turned out to be only half of the spacious room. The opposite wall, located directly opposite the foot of the hospital bed, so that the person lying there saw it constantly, was wallpapered with cheerful blue paper with teddy bears and hung with photographs in bright frames. Family shots. Darius hugging a young, beautiful, light-skinned woman with long hair. She looked about 25, no more. Darius with the same woman and a child of about 3 or 4. The boy was the spitting image of his father. The same facial features, the same smile. Photos at a water park. The child on Darius's shoulders screaming with delight. Shots from a birthday party. Both adults bending over a birthday cake with candles, kissing the toddler on his chubby cheeks. A photo on this very leather sofa in the living room. The 3 hugging, portraying the ideal happy family. And the creepiest, most monstrous shot. Darius, the woman, and the child posing with wide smiles right at the foot of the hospital bed. And on the bed, the emaciated beyond recognition figure of his mother, with an empty, extinguished gaze staring into nowhere, a living corpse as a background, as a piece of decoration for someone else's family happiness. Her legs gave way, and Azaria slid down the wall onto the cold linoleum. Everything fell into place with terrifying clarity. There was no renovation at all. The money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, went to support a second family, this secret sweet life, and Odessa May turned out to be locked in her own house, chained to a bed, forced day after day to watch her son's happiness with another woman and child, of whose existence Azaria didn't even suspect. With difficulty getting up, she went to the bedside table. In the top drawer, under packs of adult diapers and underpads, she found an ordinary composition notebook with a frayed cover. A diary. The first entries were dated 3 years earlier, written in the neat handwriting of an elderly person. Darius said he's starting a big renovation, wants me to live out my days in warmth and comfort. Lord, give him health for his care. What a good son I raised. Entry a few months later. The house has become beautiful, even too luxurious for an old woman like me. But Darius ordered me not to go out on the street alone. Says it's slippery. I might fall and break my hip. I do as my son says. Then the handwriting became more shaky. Darius brought a young woman, Sienna. Said she's a colleague from work. She has problems with rental housing. Will live temporarily until she finds an apartment. Beautiful girl, polite. He put her in the guest bedroom. Only for some reason, Darius told the neighbors that I am seriously ill and cannot receive anyone. But I am healthy, only my legs hurt a bit. Next entry. Sienna has a boy, Mateo. Darius explained it's her friend's son who got into an accident, temporarily watching him. But the boy has the same eyes my Darius had in childhood, gray-brown with sparks, and a mole on his neck in the same place. I am not blind and not stupid. Another entry, already with uneven letters. Asked straight out if this is your child, Darius. He got so angry, shouted so much, said I've lost my mind. Old senile woman. Since then, he locks the door from the outside, says it's for my own good, so I don't go out at night and fall down the stairs. The handwriting was getting worse, letters crawling apart. The last pages were covered with trembling scrawls. Heart pills ran out. Darius took the prescriptions, said he'd buy them himself, brought some other white ones. They make me feel worse, heart pounding, not enough air. Asked Sienna for help. She's a kind girl, but she's also afraid of Darius. Cried, said she wants to leave, but he won't let her. A notary came from the city. Darius demands I sign a power of attorney for all property. I refused. He threatened with Azaria, said an accident could happen to her in the city, a car crash or an attack. Lord forgive me. He uses the name of my daughter-in-law to break me. The last entry was completely illegible. He is no longer a son to me. A demon has possessed him, lives here with another woman and child, and I am dying in my own house. Azaria, baby, if you ever read this, forgive me for not being a good mother-in-law to you. I ask you for one thing. Punish him. Don't let him win. Help me, Azaria. Azaria pressed the notebook to her chest, and tears poured down like a stream. All this time, while she sat in the city apartment and believed in the endless renovation, her mother-in-law was dying here, locked up by her own son. From Miss Clementine's house, she called Attorney Pierce. He listened silently, only occasionally whistling in amazement. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Vance told me you were undergoing treatment at a cancer center. As you can see, I am alive, healthy, and in Cedar Grove. I have Odessa May's diary. Everything is written by her hand, how her son kept her locked up, switched her medicine, blackmailed her using my name. Terrible things happened here. I must confess to you. The lawyer's voice became serious. Odessa May did contact me 2 months ago. Called from the hospital where the ambulance brought her. She wanted to urgently change her will, leave all property to you, not her son. Said you were the only person she could trust, although she hardly knew you. I started preparing the documents, but a week later Darius showed up at the office, declared that his mother had senile dementia, she wasn't accountable for her actions, and 3 weeks later she passed away. The doctors said kidney failure against the background of improper treatment of the underlying disease. He killed her, Azaria said hollowly. Maybe not with his own hands, but he killed her. Starved his own mother for money and the chance to live with another family. Don't rush to call the police directly. Darius is cunning and dodgy. He might manage to hide or destroy evidence. I am leaving immediately along with trusted people from the district attorney's office. I have a friend, a detective who specializes in such cases. Miss Clementine, listening to the conversation, added an important detail. Azaria, Darius isn't in North Dakota on a job. He has a house in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I accidentally saw documents when I was delivering a notice from the mail. He dropped them on the porch. Surely he's there right now with that Sienna and the boy. The hour of waiting seemed like an eternity to Azaria. She sat at Miss Clementine's kitchen table, mechanically sipping cold tea and rereading the last lines of the diary. Punish him. Don't let him win. Help me, Azaria. Finally, 2 cars pulled up. The lawyer and 2 men in plain clothes, investigators. The plan was simple and effective. Catch Darius by surprise in his Lake Geneva hideout. The house was found in a new gated community on the outskirts of the lake town, a modern structure made of timber and glass, with panoramic windows and a groomed lot. A child's sled stood by the porch. In the yard stood a snowman with a carrot for a nose. Nearby, a snow fort. Darius was pulling his son on a bright sled along the cleared paths. On the porch stood that same light-skinned woman from the photos with a mug of steaming tea, smiling, watching their play. A picture of an ideal family idol built on the bones of his own mother. Azaria got out of the car first, not waiting for the others. The snow crunched under her feet, betraying every step. Darius heard the sound, turned around with a smile, and froze, seeing his wife. His face elongated, turned gray, eyes widened in horror. "Azaria," he exhaled, barely audibly. "Darius, baby. Who is this?" Sienna came down from the porch, squinting at the stranger. "I'm his wife," Azaria replied in a steady voice. "Lawful wife, 7 years married." "What?" The woman staggered, dropped the mug, which shattered on the steps. "But you said... You swore she died 3 years ago from cancer." "As you can see, I am not only alive, but perfectly healthy. Unlike Odessa May, whom your Darius starved to death in her own house." "Azaria, have you lost your mind? What are you saying?" Darius yelled, but panic was heard in his voice. She took the notebook out of her bag and threw it at his feet. "Your mother wrote this before she died. Everything is recorded. How you kept her locked up, how you starved her, how you blackmailed her. Read it if you have the courage." The investigators approached the gate. The older man took out a badge. "Darius Vance, Detective Miller, we have reason to believe you are involved in the death of your mother. Please come with us for questioning." "You have no right. This is private property." Darius backed away, but the investigators had already entered the yard. "We do. You are suspected of committing crimes including fraud, forgery of documents, and elder abuse resulting in death. Do not aggravate your situation with resistance." Sienna fell to her knees right in the melting snow, clutching the frightened, crying child to herself. Darius looked at Azaria with a gaze full of hatred. "You ruined everything. Ruined my whole life. No, honey. You ruined everything yourself. Your life, your mother's life, mine, and these people's. And now, it's time to pay the bills." The trial of Darius Vance became the loudest process in the county in recent years. The Chicago Tribune and local news channels ran with screaming headlines. "Son locked mother up and drove her to death for inheritance." Odessa May's diary became the key evidence for the prosecution. Handwriting experts confirmed the authenticity of the entries. Sienna, having received guarantees from the investigation, gave detailed testimony. Through tears, she told the court how Darius ignored his mother's complaints about heart pain, waving it off, saying, "Old people always invent sicknesses for themselves." How he took her prescription drugs and replaced them with ordinary vitamins from the pharmacy. How she heard screams and arguments from the locked room when Odessa May refused to sign documents. How he used Azaria's name in threats. "Sign nicely, or an accident will happen to your favorite daughter-in-law." Darius hired a whole team of expensive lawyers who tried to present the case as a family conflict. He sobbed in the courtroom, swore that he adored his mother, and did everything possible for her good. But every theatrical gesture of his crashed against irrefutable facts: fake documents, fake receipts, witness testimonies. The sentence was severe, but just. 12 years in a state penitentiary for the aggregate of crimes. All real estate transactions made with forged documents were annulled. The house in Cedar Grove passed to Azaria, the only heir Odessa May wanted to trust her property to. A year later, a short Midwest summer delighted Cedar Grove with warm days. The house on Pine Street had transformed beyond recognition. The high, solid fence was torn down, replaced by a neat wooden picket fence through which lush bushes of blooming peonies were visible. The front door now rarely closed. Neighborhood kids ran in and out constantly. Azaria, in a light sundress, was watering a flower bed with zinnias and marigolds from a hose. She made the decision to stay here, not to return to the hateful city apartment. Her new world, her redemption, was in this house that belonged to the woman who never became a real mother to her in life. Inside the house, not a trace remained of the former ostentatious luxury. Darius's narcissistic photos were burned in the yard, along with the fake documents. In their place appeared watercolor landscapes by local artists, cross-stitched pictures, framed children's drawings. The room where her mother-in-law died in confinement changed completely. The hospital bed was hauled to the dump with disgrace. The walls repainted a warm peach color. Heavy curtains replaced with light tulle. Now a small library was located here. Shelves with books from floor to ceiling, soft beanbags, a bright rug with a geometric pattern. It was a library for the local kids. Every day after school, students came here, read aloud, did homework, just talked. Azaria always kept cookies and lemonade ready. On the doorframe hung a simple wooden plaque with a burned inscription, "The Odessa May Vance Community Library. Read, and you shall be free." "Azaria, stop messing with those flowers already. You'll get heat stroke." Miss Clementine looked out from the gate with a plate of golden pastries. "I baked some sweet potato pies, your favorite. Come drink some tea." "Coming, Auntie Clem, just watering the asters." Azaria smiled that sincere smile that came from inside, from the very heart. From the open windows of the library, ringing children's voices drifted out. The kids were reading "Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry" by Roll. Azaria listened and nodded to herself. She had fulfilled Odessa May's last request. Darius got what he deserved and was now serving his sentence in a correctional facility downstate. And the house, formerly a place of suffering and lies, had turned into an island of kindness and light. Every page read by the children, every laugh within these walls, was like a prayer for the peace of the soul of the woman who cried out for justice from the last pages of a composition notebook, never having waited for help in life. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.